In addition to investing a lot of energy in the production of a reward, rewarding plants also invest a lot of energy into signaling their rewards to pollinators. The extraordinary diversity we observe of colors, shapes, and floral scents is a direct result of the evolution of attraction of pollinators. Plants go through all this trouble of signaling so that the pollinators remember the type of flower which is rewarding and then visit other flowers of the same species. Otherwise, pollination will be unsuccessful because the pollinator would tend to visit a lot of different flowers and thus cause hybridization or clogging of the stigma with heterospecific pollen. Some plants try to make the life of pollinators as easy as possible. Therefore, they use signaling to direct the pollinators straight to the reward and not waste their precious time. This is very similar to how restaurants advertise their location to human consumers. In violets, these nectar guides present themselves as lines, which are directing the pollinator towards the center of the flower, where all the pollen and the nectar reward is. Even in species whose flowers look quite plainly colored to the human eye, there can be nectar guides which are visible to insects that see in the UV spectrum, as is the case with many pollinators. And even deceitful flowers are using this signaling strategy to attract pollinators. All of the species that you see on the photo of the right have pseudonectaries. On the left, the photos show them as seen by the human eye. In the middle, they're shown under UV light, and on the right as seen by pollinators. They all have these colorful patterns, which are destined to lead the insects towards the pollen, rather the pseudonectaries, which have no reward. Other plant species are overtly honest when signaling their reward to pollinators, and for instance can change their color, odor, or shape after they have been pollinated. Here, Lotus coparius goes from yellow to orange after pollination. Latana camara goes from yellow to pink after pollination. Other flowers can even change their shape. For instance, most legume species have these asymmetric flowers that have a landing platform called when a pollinator lands on the Some Fabaceae species change their color and their shape after pollination. On the image here you have a non-pollinated pink flower that has an exposed keel, and just underneath is a pollinated flower that has changed its color to gray and has a hidden keel. In this way, the plants are signaling to the pollinators that there is no need to waste time trying to harvest rewards of flowers that have already been pollinated, and that pollinators should instead go for flowers that require pollination. In general, depending on the characters of the pollinator they're trying to attract, flowers develop different sets of signals called pollination syndromes. For instance, flowers that are preferentially pollinated by birds are red, have elongated corolla tubes at the bottom of which is situated the nectar, and they have nectar that is very nutritious because the birds require a lot of energy. The color and the nectar content have evolved specifically to attract bird pollinators, whereas the elongated tube stops other pollinators from robbing the flowers of the reward destined to birds. Bee-pollinated flowers are blue-violet and often have coloration patterns visible in the UV spectrum which the bees can see. The reward is often exposed and available to the bees, and the flowers have a large flat surface on which the pollinator can land when it harvests the reward. Moth-pollinated flowers are usually white or pale colored because moths are active by night. Their nectar is also stored at the bottom of elongated corollas, where it can be easily accessed by the surf or trumpet of the moths, but not by other pollinators. The corolla also usually lacks structures on which a pollinator can land, as moths tend to hover over the flower when they're feeding.